even though I've not met, I never had the opportunity to meet Ray Anderson. I've met people who have. And when you see the work that they've been involved in and who they are, and then when I got to kind of roll back when you peel off the layers of the onion, you start looking into it. Ray Anderson to me is the example of what we want our youth to become. As I said at lunch, he exhibited courage. He had incredible vision. He led with impact, and he dreamed big. He motivated others as he went through this, and most of you have probably not even heard of Ray Anderson. So the thing that I just mentioned to John, I'm a Cub Scout leader, and when you're with Cub Scouts, you have to dream of what they're going to be someday, and it's sometimes hard when they challenge you and they push you, and when they are not so cute as Cubs and they're now Boy Scouts and they won't take a shower when you tell them to on Wednesday at camp. Please just take a shower before your parents get here. And you go through this whole journey, and we want to make more Rays. And when I look at a 6-year-old, I want to believe that he can be that kind of environmental leader and that kind of a person who can change society around him. And I'm really blessed that John Lanier has joined us. John is the director of the Ray C. Anderson Foundation, which aims to help create a better world for future generations by advancing innovation around environmental stewardship and sustainability. Lanier previously worked in the Atlanta office of Sutherland, Asbill, and Brennan, where he served as an associate attorney in Sutherland's tax practice group, specializing in U.S. federal taxation. I always say you're a recovering lawyer because I like John. I got to know him as a person who I really enjoyed before I figured out you were a lawyer. During his time, he represented the interests of various Atlanta-based nonprofits, including the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. Lanier earned his J.D. degree from the University of Virginia Law School, and he holds a Bachelor of Arts degrees in History and Economics from the University of Virginia. My quick personal story on John, we met at the Presidio Graduate School. He already has his J.D., didn't need to go get his MBA, but both of us were attracted there because we both wanted to hear from Paul Hawken. And Paul Hawken was teaching a class, and both of us traveled. He flew from Atlanta, I flew from Dallas, or wherever I was, and we spent the weekend there really just investing ourselves in the community. When I first told him that we had a sustainability summit, he had another speaking engagement somewhere, and I said, "Tell me about your keynote speech." I said, I really want you to come to our event. I figured that John would fly in, do his message, and leave. John, being the humble guy that he is, came on Monday and has been here through the whole process with us, investing yourself as much as any of us, and I appreciate that. And his humility is one of the greatest things, and the reason why I'm pleased to give him this lectern and say, please bless us with a message and talk about Ray and the foundation. So please welcome my friend, John Lanier.
Thank you, my friend.
You bet, brother.
I'm grateful for that man. He's a friend, a good friend, and the time that we spent at Presidio together was valuable, the opportunity to learn. And that's why I appreciate you giving me credit for humility, but I'm here because I get to learn from the other people that are here and to reconnect with a few friends that I have here, the Sleeths. It's so wonderful to be with you all. Zach Carson is another one of our Presidio classmates. Just being together with people that you know believe in the same sorts of things that you do is incredibly valuable. John asked me to come and talk about legacy. And the legacy that I know, the best one that I know, is that of Ray Anderson. And I'm fortunate to be able to have called him Daddy Ray. He was my grandfather. And I have very fond memories from a young age, about 5 years old, sitting in the Georgia Tech football stadium watching games with him. I came to know and love him as a grandfather first, but then as a sustainability hero after that. To begin, I want to use an exercise that Ray would oftentimes use when he would speak to people. So it's going to be a little bit of audience participation. I apologize in advance for that. But if you'll bear with me, I'm going to ask you, all of you, to close your eyes. And I'm watching. I'm going to leave mine open, so I'm going to watch. Close your eyes, and in your mind's eye, think of a place of complete serenity, peace, where you cannot help but be happy. Picture yourself there. Imagine being in that location. And then keeping your eyes closed, I want everyone who pictures themselves somewhere outside to raise their hand. Now open your eyes and look around. We are made for nature. It resides deep within our hearts. And Ray liked to start with that because the message that he had, the story that he had to tell, was amplified when people realized that they had a connection to the natural world deep within them, and that it is shared with all of the people around them. This is a story that begins in a small town in Georgia. During the time of the Great Depression, Ray grew up in West Point, Georgia. It's right on the border with Alabama. And his memories from childhood were simple memories of the joys of fishing and swimming way down yonder on the Chattahoochee River. He went on to fall in love with any sport involving a ball, and football was the one that really took him somewhere. He was able to earn a scholarship to Georgia Tech. And when he enrolled at Georgia Tech, he had dreams of succeeding both as a football player and as a student. In his first year as a member of the junior varsity team, which was required of all freshmen at the time, he suffered an injury that ended his playing career. And maybe nowadays, if that happened to a student, they might not have a chance to go back to whatever school they're at. But his head coach told him, if you keep your grades up, you can have your scholarship for all 4 years. Ray did that. He succeeded at Georgia Tech, and he was grateful to his coach. He was grateful to that institute for the rest of his life. It was one of his great loves. And those memories that I have at those football games and those basketball games were oftentimes memories of him yelling very passionately about the thing that had just not quite gone right on the field. Ray graduated from Georgia Tech with a degree in industrial engineering in 1956. He was married at that point, had his first daughter, my mother, in 1957, and started the process of climbing the corporate ladder. For him, it was in the textile business. Milliken was the company that he was working for, and he was good at that too. He was successful, somebody that the company valued, but when it came time, a number of years into his time there, for a potential promotion, he was passed over. And that stuck with him. He didn't like being passed over. He wanted that job that he didn't have, and it placed in his mind a thought that I think every entrepreneur has at some point before they start a company. I think he said something to the effect of, do I have to work for somebody? He liked the idea of being his own boss, but he needed the idea of what he could do. Textiles is what he knew. Well, it was about that time that on a business trip to Europe, he saw something that he hadn't seen before. And he looked at it and he said, that is brilliant, it is so right, so smart, and it can work in the United States. The idea was cutting carpet into squares. That had never really been done before. Again, it was going on in Europe, but Ray realized that that was going to be the floor covering for the office of the future. This was in the early 70s. And the reason why is he recognized where office spaces were going. In the past, offices were a lot of compartmentalized rooms. They were shifting to wider open spaces where people would work in that open space. You're in an open space like that now. And let me ask you this question. If this was your office, where would you put the wires so that you could plug things in? It had been in the walls when you had compartmentalized spaces. There aren't walls here that you can put the wires into. It has to be in the floor. And it's a lot easier to get to those wires and work on them if you can pick up a square of carpet, access the floor, and then just put that carpet tile back. That was the big idea. He looked around the corner and he said, something better exists. So he went for it. He bet the farm. Ray took out his life savings, went and raised other funds, found the right people, the right equipment to start this company. And the company, Interface, was begun in 1973. And as with many startups, especially startup manufacturing companies, you've got to be out there making the next sale. And the chances of your success aren't necessarily that high until you just keep going and eventually build enough momentum that you know you're going to be fine as a company. Well, Ray didn't want just fine. He wanted to continue to grow and to show everyone that carpet tile was a better way to carpet floor. So he grew the company and grew it, and by 1983, he was able to take his company public. That is a day of celebration for any entrepreneur. The moment that you can take your company public. Yes, there's the financial inflow that lets you know you have a secure financial future. But more than that, that's a moment where a business owner says, other people want to have an ownership stake in what I built. And the pride that comes along with that was something that he certainly valued. The company continued to grow, to acquire other companies. In fact, the company that he had seen manufacturing carpet tile in Europe, they bought that company. They took it global, and by 1994, Interface was doing about $1 billion a year in sales with manufacturing across the globe. And Ray was 60 years old. He had run this company the entire time, and it was about that time where he felt like, what was the next step? There's got to be something else that I'm going to do in my life. Here I have built this company. This is my life's accomplishment. Should I retire? Chase a little white ball around a golf course? He didn't really like that idea very much. But he didn't know what it was that he was going to do. 1994 was an important year for other reasons. And it's because, in particular, a few customers out in California started asking a question of Interface salespeople they'd never heard before. What is Interface doing for the environment? One of the people who asked that question of Interface was John Picard. He targeted Interface and said, these guys just don't get it. He said that to my grandfather. You just don't get it. And Ray, who thought a little highly of himself, he'd been successful his whole life, sat there and was like, don't get what? Which was the problem. Well, when a customer starts saying, what is Interface doing for the environment, a smart company realizes that if that's a trend, you want to have a good answer. At the time, Interface was compliant with all environmental laws. Congratulations. You tell that to a customer, it's going to sell you that much carpet. You've got to come up with a vision, something that can convince people that you genuinely do care. But the company didn't care at the time. Ray didn't care. Still, strategic decision-making, you want to get a task force together to talk this out, develop a company-wide mission, give this to the sales force so that they are equipped. About 25 people were gathered together, and the task force was set to launch on August 31st, 1994. The people who were bringing it together said, Ray, you're the CEO, you're the founder, you're the one who needs to come and give us your environmental vision. Kick us off. He didn't want to do that. He actually fought them for a while, but they stuck with it and eventually talked him into giving this kickoff speech. With about 2 weeks to go before this speech, he didn't know what he was going to say. And it really did gnaw at him. He was worried about it. He'd never been in that situation where he was clueless about what message he would convey to his company. It was at that moment that, almost through serendipity, a book landed on his desk. The book was called The Ecology of Commerce. It was written by Paul Hawken, who John Stewart mentioned just a moment ago. Ray picked up this book, looking for inspiration, and started flipping through the pages. He took it home with him. And as he was sitting in bed reading this book, he got to the second chapter. It was titled The Death of Birth, which is a reference to the loss of species on our planet, which, by the way, is currently going on at a rate 1,000 times the natural rate. We're doing this as a species. He started to read about this issue, and that phrase, the death of birth, was the tip, just the tiniest scratch of a spear that was going to hit him right in the chest. And as he turned the pages, that spear went deeper and deeper. This is what he called it, his spear in the chest moment. Reading this book, he read it the entire night and was moved to tears. It was a deeply emotional experience for him. This book convicted him as a plunderer of the earth. Its thesis was that business and industry is the sector causing the greatest environmental harm and degradation that we experience globally. But business and industry is the only sector large enough, powerful enough, pervasive enough, well enough organized, and well enough capitalized to take the leadership role in getting us out of the mess that we've created. Ray had his environmental vision. And a couple of weeks later, when he stood before this task force, again, August 31st, 1994, just over 20 years ago, he shamelessly plagiarized from Hawken. Basically just rinse and repeat same thing that he said. He went on to become a very good friend of Paul Hawkins, so I don't think Paul minded too much. But he stood before his company and said, I believe that business and industry has to lead. And if that's true, who will lead business and industry? Why not Interface? In fact, it will be Interface. Imagine that. You have a successful company. It is public. There are shareholders on Wall Street that have a vested interest in what this company says and does. And here, the founder and CEO says, we are going to be sustainable because it is the right thing to do. The thinking at the time was that if you go green, you will harm your bottom line. Ray said it didn't matter. This was the right thing to do. He realized that it wouldn't matter. If we continued on the path that we are, the loss of resources globally, there will come a time where there isn't enough of some sort of input that we need as a species to either get the things that we want or to make sure that we have the things we need for our survival. And recognizing that, he looked at a time, sometime in the future, where there would have to be laws that prevented the plundering of the earth at a rate that was unsustainable. He looked deep in his own heart and realized that someday people like me will go to jail. And that shook him. You don't worry about what Wall Street says when you have this realization. He had to begin the process, though, of shifting his entire company towards this mindset. It couldn't just be him. That process was a slow one, and it required him going almost person to person, but certainly with groups, and convincing them that what he had learned is something that they needed to listen to and to believe in. And you know what? He had success doing this. He had a charm, a way about him of, honestly, it was telling people that they were doing terrible things to the planet, and those people loved him for it. I don't know how he did it, but it was really remarkable. And in the process of shifting the mindset of each person in his company, 4,000 people, from the CFO that worked right under him all the way to the person on the factory floor, he succeeded in changing a culture. That was the secret. With an entire culture of a company behind him, he was able, it really wasn't him, his team, his company was able to find better ways to make carpet. From 1994 to the present, Interface has saved over $450 million in costs avoided. That is through efficiency gains and reducing waste. That has financed everything that would have been expensive about going green. In the process, Interface has made a better product. It has a workforce that is more loyal to the job that they do. And they have a customer base that appreciates the company for more than just the thing that they can get from it. That's good for business. He proved the business case for sustainability. But he realized that you can't just nibble at the edges, gather up the low-hanging fruit, and call it a day. You have to go beyond. And so in the early 2000s, the company announced Mission Zero, their pledge to be completely neutral on the environment, not just carbon neutral, to leave no negative impact on the environment by the year 2020. And then to go beyond, to become restorative. Imagine a company that leaves the world a better place just by its very existence. Interface isn't there yet, but that's the goal. That's what they are striving for. And in the process of striving for this Mission Zero, the company realized that it was going to require a climb up what Ray called Mount Sustainability. And every organization will have to, at some point, realize the necessity of making this climb. But it will be different for each one. At Interface, they realized that Mount Sustainability had 7 different faces, each of which had to be scaled at the same time. The first, zero waste. The second was to make sure that all emissions from your manufacturing process are benign. The third is 100% renewable energy for your manufacturing. Fourth, you have to realize how to close the loop. Look at nature. The way that it has closed the loop. There is no such thing as a linear process. Fifth, you must find a way to ensure that your transportation is done in a resource-efficient manner. That's both the people that you move, that work for you, and the products that you move. Sixth, you have to have a sensitivity hookup. All of your stakeholders have to be taught what the company is learning and doing. to get everyone towards a common ethos. And then seventh, redesign commerce itself, the way that we as a society buy and sell goods. And as the company moves up these faces of Mount Sustainability, some they make more progress on than others, but they're working on all of these, and they continue to do so today. Throughout the 2000s, Ray realized his job was to step back, and not be so much CEO of the company. He relinquished that role, but head cheerleader, if you will, to continue to tell the story. He did that. He did it very well. And in fact, you can go to TED.com and search for Ray Anderson. You'll find one of his speeches there. I highly recommend it. But his job never was completed before he passed away. Ray died of cancer in August of 2011. And it was at that time that our family, my mother, my aunt, his 2 daughters, along with my brothers and my 2 cousins, there's 5 grandchildren all told. In the process of grieving, we realized that Ray had done something remarkable. We read his will, and he had left the bulk of his estate to a foundation that he'd started years before, but it was his own little side project. Now it turned into something much bigger, much more capitalized. And he left the job of running this foundation to his family. The trustees are his daughters. They had to create the vision for this foundation. And the idea was, we know that Ray would have wanted us to pursue sustainability, but the thing is, he didn't leave any instructions. It's left to us to figure out exactly how we are going to carry his legacy forward. We've been in the process of doing that. They asked me, my mother and aunt, to be the director of the foundation about 1.5 years ago. One of the greatest honors of my life, to be able to work with family, to carry forward Ray's legacy, to work for the betterment of the environment. These are passions that I'm so grateful that I get to pursue on a daily basis. We feel that we have been effective. We're still new at this, 3 years old as a foundation. We are grant makers. We look for nonprofits and universities who have their boots on the ground advancing sustainability, and we support them. We give to others in Ray's name, which is the greatest gift that he could have left his family. It's something that we're incredibly grateful for. You might think that the story I've just told you is Ray's legacy, or that the foundation that he left his estate to and the work that it does represents that legacy, or maybe its interface and the work that they still have to do in their climb up Mount Sustainability. I think his legacy probably encapsulates all of that. But in talking to you all about legacy here, that's not the direction I want to go. I want you to have that story in your mind so that I can make the next point. And it's that Ray's greatest legacy was the people that he inspired and the decisions that he made to take his company and try and find a better way to do business. I always appreciate when somebody comes up and says, I heard your grandfather speak. He was amazing, and he inspired me to go and do something different in my life or in my career. That happens all the time. It gets a big old smile on my face because I see in them the same appreciation for what he did that I have. The love of this man that I have is shared by many people that knew him or heard him speak. What Ray was able to do better than anyone I've ever known is help people answer one particular question. Why should I care? Why should I care about protecting this environment? The answer to that question is different for every person, but it is a necessary question for every individual to ask before they can become a part of this broader movement. In reflecting upon how Ray helped people answer this question, I've realized that there are 4 types of answers to that question. And I think that each of these 4, in some mix, we all can relate to. But one of these 4 is probably going to resonate with you more than the others. They're all good. They're all valuable because they all bring us together into one body of people that care about something bigger than ourselves. The first is, you should care because sustainability is good for the bottom line. When done right, it is. I won't let anyone tell me otherwise because I have the best example of it. It could be either in your business or it could be in your home. That programmable thermostat that costs you a little bit now is going to save you money if you can just tolerate 68 in the winter and 78 in the summer. My fiance, we've got that fight. When we get married, she moves in. It's going to be one big mess because she's a Florida girl, and she does not do 68 degrees in the house. That resonates with a lot of people. They say, I'm going to do the common sense thing, and I'm going to save a little bit of money. Maybe the second reason, maybe a reason that resonates a little bit more with you of why you should care, is because nature is inherently good and worthwhile of our time to protect it. Put yourself back in that place of complete serenity, peace, and joy. Put yourself there for just one moment, and then imagine a bulldozer going through it. If that doesn't make you sad, if that doesn't diminish your joy, your peace, and your serenity in that moment, then you and I aren't the same people. I think we probably are. Nature deserves, inherently, our love of it. Maybe, similar to that, but a different reason, there's a moral calling. We heard earlier today about the faith aspects of sustainability, how important they are. For many of us, it will be our belief in a creator God and his tenets, his or her tenets, that convince us that we have a responsibility towards protecting that creator's creation, our planet. I'd say that one's probably the one that resonates most with me. The fourth, and I think this might have been the one that Ray cared about the most, is an altruistic understanding of this, a highly social one. Maddie, I think you were the one that pointed out the importance of social aspects to environmental causes. Ray was motivated by a love of tomorrow's child. Tomorrow's child was the embodiment of all future generations to come to this planet, to enjoy what it has to offer. Ray wanted to work as hard as he did for my benefit and for my children's benefit and for the children of everyone that he ever met. They were deserving of it. So be it a desire to save a little bit of money, or maybe a lot of money, depending on exactly what it is that you do. Perhaps you just recognize that love of nature. It might be your morals, your love of a creator God, or it might be your appreciation for your children, your grandchildren, and generations to come. Each of these help us answer that question, why should I care? And I can tell you that tens of thousands of people that heard Ray speak, or maybe talked to somebody who had heard him speak and carried his message forward, they could answer that question for themselves because of Ray Anderson. That is his legacy. And in thinking about what our legacies will be, I think it's crucial to recognize the importance of doing good things, green things in our own lives, but recognizing that those won't be enough unless if we inspire other people to do it with us. I hope that you go home from this conference on fire to connect with people, to inspire and be inspired by them. It's the most amazing miracle of humanity, our ability to connect to other people. Cheers, y'all. Thank you very much.